Tensions were high around our apartment complex when I was around age 10. In a month's time, we had a man that committed suicide in a unit, a partial fire in a building leading to reconstruction, and a child that had been hit by a car, who later survived. Even at a younger age, I remember distinctly having a strong grasp on the bizarre events that were taking place. It had to be around spring in 1997. My mother was single and raising my little sister, about 5 years old, and me. She managed a different complex and would pick us up from school and drop us off at our apartment while she returned to work for a couple more hours. I have 3 older siblings, whom all moved out, that at some point had to keep an eye on each other at a young age, so this wasn't really a new premise. There was no money for a sitter. The oldest just had to assume the role, which at this point was me. For the most part, we were really quiet kids in our second and third story unit. We played with our toys, watched a little television, and sometimes played Sega or Nintendo. On this particular afternoon, I recall playing with a Dash Rendar figurine from Star Wars, while my sister was doing whatever in the same living room. Suddenly, the doorknob started violently shaking. My heart dropped, and I remember it being the first time that I had ever felt such terror. I rushed into the phone and paged my mom 911, and then dialed 911 to let the operator know that someone was trying to break in. The operator reassured me that help was on the way. The door handle was still being messed with, but I was nervous if the deadbolt and chain would be enough. A couple of loud bangs happened, as if someone were ramming the door with their shoulder, and then it all just suddenly stopped. The cops arrived shortly before my mom, only to find a note from the maintenance man saying something like, "Air filter check." Now the maintenance man claimed that he had announced himself verbally, but I knew it was bullshit. Of course, the cops did nothing, and my mom's complaint to the office didn't yield in this man being fired. Unfortunately, this wouldn't be the most unnerving part of the story. My mom said the guy would stare her down in the parking lot and just smile at her. The whole situation creeped us out, and we wanted to move, but we couldn't afford the expenses. One night a couple of weeks later, I was awakened to a loud thud coming from the roof. Being so easily rattled from the previous event, I ran to my mom's room and woke her up immediately. She checked around to make sure everything was in place, and reassured me that it was probably a rodent. We went to school the next morning, and were dropped off at home in the afternoon as usual. Mom usually did a quick sweep of the place, even before the attempted break-in. But this time, something seemed off. It was just a very uneasy feeling the apartment had when walking in. My sister and I were ordered to stay downstairs by the front door, while she investigated the upstairs. We waited patiently, and felt very unnerved when suddenly our mother's shrieking confirmed our suspicion. She came barreling down the stairs and ushered us out the door. We went to a neighbor's and phoned the police. My mother was barking at them, "Someone's in our apartment!" The police responded pretty quickly, and I was finally able to understand the situation. The bedroom had a walk-in closet that contained the hatch to the attic that connected the entire building's AC and heat. There were shelves that were pretty high up lining the closest walls. My mother walked in to find a dirty pair of men's underwear laying in the floor. This was enough to send her running and phoning the police. However, the investigation revealed something more. The attic hatch had been disturbed. Just to add, the police found full handprints on the shelves in the closet. The noises I heard the previous night were more than likely this man hoisting himself back up into the crawl space, using the shelves to climb in after visiting us. The man was taken into custody, but I don't recall what the sentencing was. I guess I'll need to look into it. We ended up moving into my grandmother's house shortly after. To preface this, I want to say last year I spent about 32 days in the woods, either scouting, hunting, or fishing. The year before that, I spent about 22 days. This doesn't include my regular hunts and camping adventures, which in the past 3 years adds up to just over 100 days. I've been hunting since I was 9, and have spent a lot of time outdoors, in different parts of the US and in Canada. I've seen and heard a lot of strange shit, but this takes the cake. I was in Cahuta, North Georgia wilderness, for about 7 days scouting for bears, wild hogs, and deer, prepping for a hunting trip later that year. I had hiked in about 10 miles, and then went off trail for another 3 to 5. Basically, I was out in the middle of nowhere. Since I was alone, I was using a hammock that has a built-in bug net, and I had a rain fly over it. I spent about 3 days halfway up a mountain, just looking for a good place to hunt. I saw 3 or 4 good-sized bears and about 10 hogs. Came across some good-sized deer, too. On the 4th day, I was going to head down to a small stream that I had marked on my GPS, and then set up camp, restock on water, and prep for the 2-day hike back. I could have gone faster, but I wanted to be able to look for any animal signs along the way. As I was approaching this small stream, I noticed a tent, which I was excited to see. I had been completely alone for a few days, and it's always nice to run into another hiker. Generally, us wilderness folks are pretty down to earth. As I got closer to the tent, I noticed that there was a small pack on the ground just outside of it. I figured the person couldn't have been far from where the camp was, so I set up my camp about 30 yards away, and with about 4 hours of daylight left, started cooking some dinner. 2 hours later, I was starting to wonder where this person was. Given that I was in the wilderness, and it was about a 1+ day hike out, there wasn't much I could do. But I did hike around the site, making a circle as I went out to look for any signs of struggle in case of a bear attack, or maybe if they had an injury. I got about 1/4 of a mile from the camping site, walking a circle, but I didn't find anything. As night came, no one showed. I started a fire in hopes that the person would be able to find where they set up and have some light. Fires burn really bright and are very easy to see from far away. After eating, searching, and hoping that the person was going to make it back, I called it a night. I had a small flask with me and took a couple of sips of whiskey, jumped into my hammock with my pistol, and attempted to go to sleep. I sleep pretty hard. I mean really hard, regardless of where I am. It literally annoys my friends, because I can always seem to fall asleep and stay asleep, regardless of where in the world we are. But this night was different. I felt like something was off, but I figured it was just me worrying about this person, who by all my accounts was completely missing. So, for the first time in my life, I woke up to the sound of what I thought were footsteps, but not in the sense of footsteps on leaves. What a heavy-footed person would make walking on an old wood floor. It was extremely loud. I got my gun, grabbed my headlamp, stored in a small compartment above me, and waited to see if it would stop. Right at that moment, it did. Then I saw something that scared the shit out of me. On my rainfly, the gleam of a flashlight, faint but there. I shouted, "Hello?" And right when I did, it sounded like 10 people suddenly running away from me in every direction. I dropped out of my hammock onto the ground, frantically turning on my headlamp and shining it all around me, but I couldn't see shit. My heart was racing pretty bad, but I thought it might have just been the reflection of the moon on the rainfly. Yeah, that was it, and those footsteps running away from me were probably armadillos or something, even though their eyes shine, and they're pretty easy to spot. Problem was, there was no moon. I had never even seen an armadillo above 2,000 feet, not to say they don't live up there, but I've just never seen one, and for some reason, the campsite I was set up by was all gone. The fire had been put out by water. It was apparent because there was not a damn coal in the thing. I thought for sure it was about 4 a.m., but I had only been asleep for about an hour. At this point I wanted to leave, but hiking out in the wilderness while it's dark is always a bad idea, so I grabbed my flask, took a swig of whiskey, removed my rainfly so I could see out of my hammock and around the area I was in, and tried my hardest to go back to sleep. I was laying down when I saw some light hit the trees above me. It was pretty clear it was coming from downstream, and I got out of my hammock and started yelling, "Hey, y'all need any help?" No response. I saw whatever was putting out the light, and it spun around and started heading downstream really fast. At this point, my body had pumped through more adrenaline than it had blood, and I was exhausted from all of it. I was finally able to fall asleep, and woke up around 7 a.m. When I did, I noticed that my water filter I had left out was missing. It's a gravity filter, and it hangs on a tree filtering water down into my main bladder that I put in my backpack, and my water bladder sitting at the base of a tree looked like it was cut down the middle with a knife. They cut down my bear bag, which had food in it, and took some of it. The creepiest part of it all was that they went through my bag, which was under my hammock, while I was sleeping. I checked the bear bag before I went back to sleep the second time, and it was still there hanging, and my bag under my hammock hadn't been touched. I packed all my shit and hightailed it out of there, keeping my pistol close to me, and moving as fast as I could. I ended up making the hike back in just under 15 hours. I hiked the trail part in the night, because I wasn't about to spend another night out there. I didn't see anyone on my hike out. There were no cars parked at the trailhead, and the DNR said they had only seen my car there. Since then, I haven't gone out there by myself without friends. I reported all of this to the local DNR, but they looked at me like I was crazy. Maybe I am. My oldest brother has a drug addiction, and it's led to more than a few times meeting people I'd rather not ever know. Some of them are pretty harmless but weird. Some of them are nice one day and not the next. And some of them are plain balls to the wall certifiable. Just some background. I'm the eldest. My brother Age is the second eldest, and Nat is the third eldest. There are 4 brothers and another sister, but only Age, Nat, and I were the ones involved this time. At the time this incident occurred, we were living in a house on the highway of the town I was born in. I was about 30, living with my mother, her boyfriend, and Nat. I was medically unable to work at the time, and Nat has a mental disability that makes it impossible for him to work, so he and I were in charge of the house. Easter had just passed, and Age ran up begging to be allowed to come home for a while, since he'd just broken up with his newest ex. Mom, being a soft touch when it comes to us kids, was all for letting him crash in the lounge, but only with the promise that there'd be no drugs or alcohol in the house. He gave his word. Nat and I facepalmed as he had already done this a few times, and Age set up house in the lounge for the next week. Or so it was supposed to be anyway. A month later, and several drug addicts becoming regulars at our door, and Mom finally got annoyed enough to tell Age to look for a flat or a caravan or anything. He wasn't allowed to stay with us any longer. Nat and I, who had been dealing with knocks on the door every day, and a police raid of all things, yeah, fun, sighed in relief. Age found a nice flat in the next town over, and we resumed our happy, quiet, knock-free lives. All was well, for about a week. Then the phone calls started. They began as a quick succession of calls around dinner time. 2 or 3 at a time, with an immediate hang-up as soon as we asked who was there. Nothing too troublesome. But of course, then it escalated. They began happening at 11 p.m., which quickly got on Mom's goat. She has no time for annoyances past 10, and even family knows not to call the house phone that late, or suffer her wrath. So it was no surprise when after the 5th night of phone calls, we heard Mom shouting over the phone to the person who was on the line, that if they called again, she'd call the cops. The phone call stopped, and we shrugged it off as someone just being stupid or playing a joke. A few days later, I was the only one at home when I heard a car revving nearby. Now, the house we lived in had no fence around the front yard, just a concrete setting where a hedge would have been planted at some point. Mom had put some cactuses there, flanking the path that led to the front yard proper. To the side of the house was a nature strip, where Mom sometimes parked a Pride and Joy Beastie, a car, HSV or something rather. She'd be horrified to know I don't know the specs. Across the road in that direction was a car dealership that had show cars. To the right of us was a house that was locked up and currently had no one living in it. In front of the house is the highway, and our backyard contains what would also be the back house of a block. It's a big yard, as you can imagine, so the only place for a car to park and rev would be the dealership or where my mum parks. Glancing out the window, I noticed a strange car pulled up on the side of our house, almost touching the cactuses and facing our front lawn, as though it were about to go driving on it if a tree hadn't been in the way. Thinking it was a friend of Mum's boyfriend, I shrugged it off and waited for them to get out of the car and come to the front door. After about 10 or 15 minutes of this revving pass, I start to wonder what the hell is going on. I can't see the driver, since the tree branches were in the way, but I'm not particularly perturbed about it at first. We've had a few people pull up on the nature strip in order to turn around, and initially I thought this might be what was going on after no one got out. I'm starting to get a bit antsy though, and consider getting the phone and making a call to the cops, when a Land Rover pulls up into the dealership just across the road from the car. It must have spooked them pretty bad, because whoever it was in the car reversed off and left. I shrugged it off, which was kinda stupid, but it was the middle of the day, and they hadn't blared horns or interacted in any weird way, bar though revving and being on our parking area. I wasn't feeling that worried. I mentioned it when Mom got home, and she told me to call her or my aunt if it happened again. It was forgotten for a few days. It was around 10 p.m., and I'd been reading some manga. I'm a nerd, sue me. When I heard a car pull up outside. It didn't really register all the way. Something in my mind told me, the car, Mom must be home, and shrugged it off. Less than 5 minutes later, I hear this pounding on my window and the cracking sound of glass. Of course, this startles the hell out of me. I drop the book and go wide-eyed, looking at the window where the pounding came from, wondering if I'm just imagining it. Then a woman starts to scream, calling me a whore and a bitch, and demanding to see Age, and how he's fucked with the wrong woman, how she's going to kill him, and me, and all other kinds of craziness. At this point, I was thinking, what the actual fuck? Trying to process what the hell was going on, and who this crazy woman was. I couldn't possibly have done anything to offend her. How did she know Age? I'm a bit shell-shocked, and Nat comes bursting into my room, looking a bit rattled, while I hear Mum's voice yelling about getting the cops if the woman doesn't clean her out. The woman kept screaming and yelling, and beating on the house, so the cops were called. She was warned not to come near the property again, and we figured it was over. Mum rang Age, who told us that she was the ex of his friend. Age had convinced his friend to dump her, since she was an abusive woman who'd beat him up on the regular and steal his money, for drugs of course. So apparently, she tracked him down and decided to start a weird campaign of ineffectual terror before things came to a head. The lady was given a warning to piss off and not bother us again. Age's friend takes her back after another sob story, and Age goes to another different town and starts dealing drugs there. Fine, whatever. Except no. Because 2 weeks later, the crazy woman has broken up with him again. We're outside since it's been a warm day, having a small bonfire around 9 p.m. It's just past dusk, getting darker, and Nat, Mom's boyfriend Stu, and I are hanging out, just joking around and considering whether we should get some marshmallows or sausages on the bonfire, when we hear a car pull up to the fence next to the driveway. It's the same car I saw last time, and 3 men climb out and come over the fence. These are pretty bulky guys, all taller than me, and I'm about 160 centimeters. Nat is solidly built, but not much taller than me, and Stu was at the time recovering from a motorbike accident that saw him nearly killed. So we're watching these 3 come up with trepidation. Mom, unbeknownst to me, was watching from a window inside the house and had gotten the phone calling the cops just in case. I had been about to go back inside to get the marshmallows, so I was near the back steps and close to the back door, torn between watching to make sure that Stu and Nat didn't get all macho and looking for a weapon of some kind, and tearing inside to call the cops. Meanwhile, the bitch comes out of the car happy as a lark and starts mouthing off about how Age is gonna get his for stealing her man, and how her friends are gonna beat up everyone here. The men start making threatening noises, demanding Age and the woman's boyfriend to come out, or else there'll be some dead bodies laying around. For some reason they thought Age and the guy were here, even though he was in a whole nother part of the country, and apparently so was the guy. I was panicking, and ducked inside to get to the phone, but Mom shushed me, and seeing she had it, kept the back door open to watch. Stu and Nat keep telling them that Age and the guy aren't there, that they're free to check if they want to, if they come back during the day, that kind of thing. At one point, Stu grabs a hammer, and of course this makes the other guys more aggressive, demanding what he thinks he's going to do with it. One of them tries to open the gate, which is when our dog barks like crazy, and the guy backs off a bit. Of course, that's about the time the cops show up. That's when things cool down, but we watched in bewilderment as the guys greet the cops all friendly-like and start chatting them up like old buds. They leave, and the cops take a few notes and head off, and we never hear anything more about the incident. Thankfully, the woman who incited the whole incident left town not long after, and then ended up in jail after trying to rob a jewelry store. Age still has questionable taste in friends, but doesn't bring them around the house when he visits, thankfully. And the cops, well, some of them are okay, just not the ones that came around that night. Still, be careful who your friends are involved with, because it could be trouble for you or your family. What is up, guys? Blue Spooky here, as always. I just wanted to thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you made it this far to the end of the video. If you guys enjoyed the video, please feel free to leave feedback in the comments below, as well as perhaps like, share, or subscribe if you feel so inclined. If you have a personal story that you'd like to submit, or you'd like to just send me a message, links to all of my social media will be in the description for the video below. This includes my Gmail, Twitter, and Facebook accounts. Go ahead and send me a message on any of those, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. If you do decide to send in a story, please be sure to include in the tagline what the theme of the story is, if it has any, the name of the story, and how you would like to be credited in the description of the video the story appears in. If you're curious at all about the music used in this video, the music is always listed in the description below, in the order which it appears. I also have links to the artists and list the tracks by name, just in case you want to find more of their work. Last but not least, if you have any criticism, please be sure to leave it in the comments below, as I'm always looking for new ways to improve the channel. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day.